Welcome all to my paranormal closet where the stories and magic take place. Today's guest owns a haunted Airbnb she refers to as Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home. She's a real estate investor who also runs a dog rescue and fosters special needs dogs. I love that. Join me in welcoming Elsie Lodde. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So you own this beautiful historic home on Main Street in Jackson, California, and you say it's haunted, huh?
Very much so.
My goodness. Well, for the listening audience, situated in historic Amador County, renowned for gold mining and rich fertile soil that grows fantastic wine, grapes. Visitors to the county are just minutes away from some of the best small wineries in California. Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home is in the heart of Jackson and near to all of the amazing destinations in Amador and Calaveras counties. If all anyone wants to do is chill, they can relax in the home's lovely library, enjoy a meal in the large eat-in kitchen, play board games, or watch the smart TV. Built in 1906, the house is a folk Victorian with charm and spades. Most of the furniture has been hand-picked to add to the historic charm of the house. Guests can hear the rushing water from the creek that runs at the base of the back of the house. The house feels more like a living thing than just a house. It has a certain air about it. The spirits that reside there enjoy communicating and are nice, but are willing to leave guests alone when asked to do so. Elsie, do you happen to know the back history of the house?
I do. So I was told when I first saw the house online, all I knew was I had to buy it. That was it. I had to buy this house. And Jackson is sometimes a little bit difficult to get a hold of people. So we contacted the realtor literally every day, and she just was not so great about getting back to us. And then finally she showed me around, and the only thing that she told me is that it used to be a brothel, which I was like, all right, fine. Now that I've done more research, so on the paperwork it says it's 1906, but now that I've done more and more research on the house, it actually appears as if it dates back to the 1870s.
Okay.
And even the fire map of 1895, it's there, and it's the same shape it is today. And there weren't that many houses on the streets, and the houses both to the right and left of me weren't built until the 30s. So it appears as if, even though on paper it says 1906, it actually appears as if it dates back at least to 1877, when a single woman bought it for $450 from the original owner, who he actually owned the mine, and he owned a lot of the town. Literally the next street over from Main Street is named after that original owner. So chances are a single woman would not have purchased a lot of empty land.
We froze for a minute there, and you had said that the man owned most of the town. That's the last thing that I heard.
So George Stossel, he had purchased the house for like $7 from the courts. So the next block over is named after him. And then the next owner after that would have been Margaret or Maggie Guerra. She got married 7 years later and became Holder. So I believe that was more likely the time in which it was a brothel, because again, it was owned by a single woman, which was extraordinarily rare in the gold rush days for women to even be allowed to own property altogether. Single women without being given the house's properties by the death of a husband or a father.
She paid a hefty fee. $400 back then was a fortune.
But in gold rush towns, literally during the gold rush, there's like advertisements where coffee cost $40 and a pound. So it was an expensive place to live at that time because of the gold. There's plenty of money coming in, so inflation was high, and that probably didn't change until the early 1900s.
Okay. There's a common misconception that a home's sellers must tell you if the house might be haunted, but in fact, the concept of caveat emptor or buyer beware is alive and well in the world of paranormal real estate. Did you know that the house was haunted? Did they release that information to you when they sold it to you?
No, they did not. So in California, I should have been notified that the house was haunted. It is considered a stigmatized property. So I should have been told that, but I definitely was not. The real estate agent basically, there was a family who lived there for 60 years, and most of the spirits still live in the house. There's still a woman who grew up in that house, and she's in her late 80s at this point in time. And she kept trying to talk to the real estate agent, and the real estate agent kept saying, I don't want to hear it because then I have to disclose it. I don't want to hear it because then I'll have to disclose it. And she told me that. Although, honestly, if they told me, I don't think I would have been dissuaded. But that is because usually when you think of haunted properties, there's usually, oh, maybe somebody sees somebody in a window every once in a while. It's not a daily occurrence, where in this house, it is a daily, hourly occurrences. So it's not like a lot of places, because there is so many spirits who live there, that it's an extremely active home.
You seem to be doing well by letting your renters know that it's haunted.
So I would consider myself a highly intuitive empath. I definitely have a lot of mediumship abilities and have since I was a child. So I don't think it's fair for people like me to go to a house and not know that. So I felt like I had to disclose it. And I bought the house to be a long-term rental. I don't have any Airbnbs, but it just happened that I had tenants move in and tenants move out within 2-3 months. And I just thought I need to do something different. And, previously, the people who wanted to buy the house before me, they wanted to run it as a halfway house, which I just can't even imagine now, having a halfway house in this home that is, very active. So yeah, it's definitely wasn't what I would expected. No, I had to do a lot of pivoting with this property for sure. But, there is a fair amount of people who are interested in haunted locations, and they all love the house because literally, like, the second you walk in it, you're like, oh yeah, this house is haunted. It just has an energy about it, about the whole house. It is so alive. And the second you walk in the front door, it's like it slaps a lot of people, especially if you're an intuitive person. It just smacks you. And so I just didn't think it was fair. So again, when I was renting as a long-term rental, because I realized it was haunted myself when I did my final walkthrough. But by then it would have been too late to back out anyways. But yeah, so I knew before I ever rented it out that the house was definitely haunted. And so, I did tell everybody who moved in, hey, by the way, the house is haunted. And obviously they had experiences all the time too. So they knew, again, there's no doubting it. When, the first tenant lived there, we had footsteps, wet little baby footsteps appear on the steps. A tiny handprint appeared on the stairs. And then, the bouncing of balls, the closing of doors, the messing with lights. Like, so there's just footsteps and bangs and stomps and pounds. So it's a daily occurrence. So I think after about 2-3 months, enough was enough.
I'm sure it makes believers out of a lot of people that go in there thinking they don't believe in ghosts, and then all of a sudden, I recently read an article written by a reporter from the Washington Post who stayed in a haunted Airbnb, and when she went in, she didn't believe in ghosts, but after staying there, she came out thinking very differently.
Yeah, and again, the spirits in my house, I'm lucky because again, it's a family. We do, I believe, have a portal in the basement, but the patriarch of the family, Steve, I think he really keeps track of who's allowed to come in and out of the house. But when people come and they're scared and they want nothing to do with the spirits ignore them. I mean, I had an Airbnb tenant recently can't come through. It was just a family, 2 children, and parents, and they weren't there for the ghosties. But they said that they had some doors shut, but that was it. So it was fine. But I recently had a man who stayed a week, and he said, "I have to tell you, I'm really afraid of ghosts." And I said, "Just go in there and tell them that to leave you alone," and they will, and they do. So, but if you go in there to talk to them, they're gonna talk and talk and talk.
So why do you suppose that you lost so many renters in the beginning that were coming and going so quickly if they were able to just tell them to leave them alone?
So I actually have an issue as well. The house during the day has this amazing energy. It feels like Disneyland. It is just I mean, I just can't explain it. So unless you really feel energy, but this house just has an amazing energy. And then at night, about an hour before dark, it gets very heavy. About it. I think they wanted me to buy the house. That's why they hid from me the first 2 times I was there. And I have a good relationship with the spirits where I almost feel like we're family. Although Steve said, no, we are not family, but we are friends. But
Okay.
so I have these connection to these spirits and to this house, and I still don't like to be there alone at night.
Really? You don't want to be there
No, I
alone
mean,
at night?
yeah, if I'm there and if I sleep there by myself, I sleep on the couch, which is like the furthest away from the creepy part of the house. And I usually fall asleep with the TV on. And yeah, no, I mean, I personally don't like to be there alone at night. When I saw the house, one of the things I loved
Why?
about it, it's just heavy and you feel like you're being watched. And I don't know. I can't explain it. I wish I could because
Mm,
I'm a very logical human being. Although I'm an empath and I feel energy, I'm a very logical person. I don't get ruffled over much. And so for me, and like I've tried to rationalize it, like, Elsie, this is dumb. Like, just go sleep in whatever. And I've only slept in 2 of the 4 bedrooms upstairs. I've never even slept. I won't. Like, I don't think there's any way you'd get me to sleep in one of the other bedrooms at all.
wow.
So, and again, nobody knows the house and the spirits better than I do. And I know nothing bad has happened. The worst thing that's happened there is like they've broken some things. They've knocked things off the wall and broken them. That's happened twice. That's about the worst things that they've done. But still, it's just, I don't know, it's just really heavy. And it's especially the back part of the house, which is the most active. It's the closest to the creek as well. But there's a spirit back there who is grumpy and I just feel it. So I just try to stay as far away from it as possible. Now, that's
Mm,
upstairs. So the house is really big and it's a ground floor and it's the basement. So the kitchen is on the basement level. I put another bathroom down there. And then I was able to block off 2 doors and then put a whole apartment. That's a 2-bedroom apartment. Downstairs, down there in the kitchen, in the apartment, it's fine. So I had no problem being there alone at night. I basically lived in that apartment for about 6 months on weekends while I was working on the house and getting it ready. And decorating it, doing redoing furniture and all the stuff that I did. And down there is no problem. But when I was staying down there, there was nothing upstairs. If I forgot something upstairs, I am not doing that project tonight because it'll have to wait until it's sunlight before I'm going up there again. So now I'm stuck
wow.
upstairs because I have a tenant downstairs, so I don't have a choice. But so yeah, it is very heavy. So I could see, and that was one of the reasons why I decided to turn it into an Airbnb because I thought, how heavy and kind of depressing and oppressive it is up here. I don't think it's great for people's mental health, just to be honest. So,
We're freezing up again.
no.
Okay. All right. So the last thing I heard was you saying how that you're stuck up there now because you have a tenant
Yeah.
downstairs.
So I just decided that, because the house is oppressive, depressing, heavy, that nobody should probably, for their mental health, be staying there for a long period of time. And that's when I switched from being a long-term rent or from a long-term rental, because what I do is I rent by the room. So I basically run boarding houses. So instead I switched from that model to just Airbnb being the whole thing out.
Well, that makes sense. Well, I know you said that there was footprints and bouncing balls and that sort of thing. You also mentioned in our earlier discussions about cases of touching, items being moved, distinctive orbs, EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomena, pretty much everything paranormally imagined. What kind of EVPs have you encountered?
So I was lucky that when I got my business license, I went to the county to get my fictitious name statement. And a woman who works at the county happens to do paranormal investigations. And so we started chatting, and she gave me a record of everybody who lived in the house. And so I work in research. So I immediately delved into trying to figure out, hey, who all these people were, because, maybe these are the spirits in the house. And I really didn't get very far. And then she came over after a couple months. I think she wanted to see if I was full of it. And of course, she walked in and got dizzy right away and kind of felt sick in one of these rooms. I'm like, yeah, you have to leave that room. And so when we went down into the basement, she said, hi, my name is Marcy. What's your name? And it said Steve. So we were using the Necrophonic app. And I was like, Steve, who's Steve? And then it kind of clicked. And I actually have a video because I have cameras in my basement because it does flood because we're on the creek. And you see the light click in my brain of who Steve was because his legal name was Stefano. And when I Googled him under Stefano, I found like his obituary, and that's it. So then after that, I went and Googled Steve with his last name and found so much information, all of his criminal record and his shady past, and then was able to find his family's shady past and murders that happened at the house and all sorts of things, which I wouldn't have gotten if he hadn't have told us his name was Steve. And so but sometimes it's just nonsense. So until recently, I really was concerned that there's bodies buried in my basement. Why is there so many spirits? Who's this girl in the closet? I don't know. And so we were asking them, how many bodies are in the basement? 10. Okay, I don't think that's right. How many bodies are in the basement? 7. How many bodies are in the basement? 9. How many bodies are in the basement? 8. And then finally, the other guy who was there, he said, if you don't know, just say, I don't know. And it said, I don't know. So, I mean, we get kind of all sorts of stuff. If people use the Estes method, which is where they're blindfolded and they have noise canceling headphones, and they're just listening to white noise. So we get full on conversations between two spirits in that way. But we've had a lot of contact through EVPs. I've only had DVP, which is the direct voice phenomenon, which you can hear outside of that. I've only had that once, and I have a video from my basement, and it sounds like it says good. She says good morning, and it sounds like a girl's voice. But yeah, so we've kind of gotten all sorts of that, but they tend to like REM pods. They make those go off a lot, or all sorts of electronics. They mess with electronics all the time. The lights, they mess with the lights all the time. My first Airbnb guest, there was 8 people. The stove wouldn't work for them, and they were like 8 people who work for Pacific Gas and Electric. So I'm pretty sure they know how to use an oven, but it wouldn't work. And the next day it worked fine. So I've since stopped calling electricians and stuff. I just say, let's give it a day and see what happens. And it always, those lights start working again. The things start working again. So I kind of felt like if I don't tell people also that it's haunted, they'll think I'm a slumlord when this stuff doesn't work properly. But I swear the house is in good condition, even though it's old. It's had a lot of love put into it. But yeah, so they mess with all sorts of electronics, specifically the cameras. They've moved the cameras, flashing lights. We've gotten pretty much everything you can get, we get it. There's one that's handsy and likes to grab women. So originally it was just like touching their backs, but now it's gotten to the point where it really likes to grab women's butts.
Oh boy.
And they have a type. Chubby brunette women is the type. So that's what he likes. He likes what he likes. And so that's something. I had a man who also was touched once. He has a shaved bald head. And apparently like twice a finger was rubbed from like the top of his crown to the back of his crown. He felt that twice within a night. But I personally have a block, so I can't see spirits. When I was a kid, I used to see them and they scared me. And so I just decided that I wasn't going to see them anymore, and I haven't been able to see them since. Other people have seen shadow figures and stuff like that. I can't do it. I don't see it. Like there'll be 4 of us staring down the hallway. 3 of them will be freaking out over this like 1-minute interaction of seeing this shadow like popping its head in and out of the doorway, but I can't see it. But I've watched other people see it, so.
And I'm sure with all the videos that people have gotten in the house, you've probably seen them on video as well, right?
No, most of the people, so most of the paranormal groups have come in, to be honest, they have never sent me anything. They've never given me anything. I think a lot of paranormal groups, like the hobbyists, they go in and they want to experience the joy and figure out if the place is haunted, right? And they might sit around for 4 hours in the dark. And so then they have to go back and listen. My house is so obviously haunted. You experience so many things that I feel like they just don't have the desire or need to do that. I do have a group, like a documentarian coming or later in the month, and some TV shows and stuff like that in the works. So maybe I'll see it then. But yeah, no, I haven't. And it's not just in my house. Like I was at Waverly recently with my nieces, and I brought up my boo buddy, and apparently it was moving in the hallway, and there's like 20, 25 people in the hallway, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's moving. I can't see it. Not at all. So
Wow.
I can feel them, but I can't. And I get like, I'm a physical medium, so I'll get sicknesses or whatever that tell me kind of what,
Mm-hmm.
what they died of or whatever they want to show me. And I'll get flashes of different things, but I don't actually see them. So yeah, and it's not just in my house, it's everywhere.
How have some of them died?
So Steve and his wife, they died of old age. So nothing
Okay.
exciting there. He was 91 when he died, and he moved in the 1920s, and he died in the early 80s. And his wife died in the late 80s. And then their daughter, she was an alcoholic, so I'm sure that helped. She died in the mid 90s, and I'm not sure when her husband died. And then some of them I don't know who they are, and I believe we have. So I used to think that the house had a bunch of children, which perplexed me because as a boarding house and a brothel, I mean, obviously sex workers have children, so maybe there were children in the house. But I only had one documented case of a child dying in the house. So I was perplexed by the different, like the footprint was small, but the handprint was larger. And the handprint only has like 4 weird fingers. So I should have known before, but I think we're realizing now that we have water elementals, and they're probably the ones stealing the stuff because they like to take things and move things. Um, and they also have been going in, the tenants have grandchildren that visit, and they are playing with their toys and their music boxes and moving the magnets on the fridge to like cover the faces of their grandchildren.
Is this in the basement where you said
Yeah.
that I thought it was clear of ghosts in the basement.
No, it's just not as heavy. I mean, there's ghosts in the entire house. The downstairs would
Oh,
have been the speakeasy. So that's where the dining room was. So where the living room is now, it's probably where they did the gambling. So yeah, so that would have all, there was people down there too. It's just not the heavy, oppressive feeling that upstairs has, because that's all I had was a camera in the basement for a long time because that was my space. I can't put cameras in public spaces, which is why
right.
I don't have as many videos as I'd like. But yeah, I can't just put a camera in an Airbnb, right? That would be creepy. So in my apartment, I can. And so that's where we were getting orbs, and we've caught things moving and stuff like that. So we've gotten all sorts of stuff, but I haven't really had cameras in the house since now May at all because I have tenants. So besides the unfinished part of the basement, I don't have cameras in the house now.
Did you say that the tenants' grandkids have played with the spirits?
No, the spirits play with the
Oh, we're
grandkids
freezing up, so
stuff.
because I gotta wait for you. You're like frozen.
Am I unfrozen yet?
Okay. All
Okay.
right. So have the tenants' grandchildren played with the spirits?
Not that I'm aware of, but I don't know that they spend the night. Although the spirits are active during the day, but the spirits play with the kids' stuff. So their
Oh,
toys, they'll
okay.
make them turn on. They have a music
Mm.
box that also will clink a couple of times.
The only
But
reason
yeah,
why I asked you was because young children are known to see spirit. I mean, that was when I first saw my first spirit when I was like 7. So
same.
that's why I asked. And how did the child die in the house?
Don't know. No record.
Oh,
Back in, I think he died in like 1886. And back then, alls I have, and same for his mother, the second owner of the house, alls I have is the son of William died, and I have the wife of William died. So I'm going to try to reach out to the diocese and see if maybe they have records. But I have no idea how the baby died, but there's so many ways to die back then. So who knows? I feel
right.
like Maggie, the mom, she died at 41, and I feel like she probably died of like consumption or something where she couldn't breathe, because that's the only physical effect I've ever gotten in the house. They don't do that to me. They don't make me feel sick like when I go to other places, which is nice of them. But I've only had actually 2 experiences, and it's both been with breathing, so I'm thinking that that's her.
You said that there have been occasions where the spirits have made other people so sick that they had to leave, right?
Mm-hmm. So I have to wonder sometimes. I have an inappropriate connection to the house. I know this. Sometimes I feel like the house um, reacts to people I don't or wouldn't like poorly. So, for example, there was a woman who was there. I wasn't there, but I saw her on the cameras in my basement. And in my brain, I just kept saying, just be quiet. Stop talking. Be quiet. Because these are people who ask a question but don't give the spirits a second to answer. And I'm like, it just frustrates me, right? So she's a narcissist is what I'm getting energetically, and it totally tracks. And so when they were doing the ESID method, every time she tried to talk, they'd be like, stop talking, be quiet. And I was like, oh. And I didn't really think about it. So this person just a couple weeks ago came in, and he was sick to the point that his group members made him leave and basically said, you need to go straight to the ER. Like, you need to go to the ER. Like, they were worried that he was having a heart attack or something. Like, he was just not doing well. Well, I went to go on Facebook and I guess halfway home, he started feeling fine. So it was the house. And so I went to go on Facebook to tell him, like, hey, I'm sorry. And then I saw his Facebook feed, and I'm like, I'm not messaging this guy, because he's just not somebody that I would want to have a conversation with in real life. And so I wondered, I'm like, did they do that because they knew that this is not somebody, like, the stuff he was posting is the exact opposite of my beliefs on everything, you know? And
Gotcha.
so I kind of wondered, I'm like, is that why they were mean to him? And the thing is also the house, like, if you ever get the headache and dizziness and nausea, which is often common when a place has a lot of energy, right? You can't just leave the house. You have to go like into the middle of the street. If you sit on the porch, that porch is actually, Steve is right under that porch in the basement. And so you have to actually leave go through the gate and get out into like the middle of the street before you feel better. So it's pretty
You told me there
rare.
was a night when the spirits were pumping you full of energy, which is really strange because the common thing for them to do is drain one's energy because it feels the power, it needs, it fuels their powers to perform. Can you explain why you think that happened?
So this was like 3 weeks ago. It was the same night that guy got sick, actually. That was the 100-year anniversary of a crazy disaster. One of the largest mine disasters probably in the United States. 47 miners died, and it was the 100-year anniversary of it. And so I kind of expected that it might get a little more active than usual, because at 11:30 at night, all of the bells, the church, the museum, the fire station, everything, all the bells rang at 11:30 at night, 47 times, one for each miner that perished in the accident. So I kind of expected that there'd be more energy. And then we also had 2 mediums, plus like 5 of us. That's not including me, because I don't consider myself a medium because I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to use my abilities, but they do. And then we had, probably 3 other, including me, empaths, and then a couple of other people as well. And so I like think that between all of our like psychic energy we had, plus this event and the bells and everything else, it was 5 o'clock in the morning when I finally told the spirits and the people, I've got something to do at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Everybody needs to go to bed. Like, we're done. Because usually my spirits are like, they start at like 7:30 at night and they're kind of done by 11. They're not ones that want to play all night, but it was nonstop that night, to the point where they kept pulling us to communicate in different areas. Cause like we had REM pods set up that they would just keep sending off, like, hey, remember me? Hey, remember me? And I had one in the living room, or no, in the library, and it was just going off and going off, and we turned it off. And we turned it back on, and then it started calling out SOS. And we're like, huh,
Mm.
that's weird. And again, it wouldn't stop. So we had to shut it off. And then we're like, oh, quick, let's go. One of the mediums, he wanted to use his divining rods in the basement really quick before we decided that we were going to go take a walk at 11:30 to see the bells, ringing, to be outside when that happened. And so it wasn't until we got down there that we were like, I wonder if that's related to the miners. Well, that was at 10:45. I didn't realize that apparently at 10:45 is actually when the first noticed that there was a problem. That's when the skip stopped working, which would have been like the elevator would have stopped working. So
Interesting.
I think it was very likely connected to that. But yeah,
Sure.
it just SOS straight for until we had to shut it off because it was like 2 minutes of it
Wow.
just SOSing. So
Boy,
yeah.
oh boy. Your house is a dream investigation for me. I'm a paranormal investigator, and we did an investigation in the Sterling Hill mines in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. We were in there for 6 hours, and it was just so incredibly amazing. We had so much happening. And it's very rare that you have a paranormal investigation that so much happens. Most of the time, it's quite boring. We could sit there and have nothing happen. So, your house is my dream
And
investigation.
I've never done a paranormal investigation before, and I am ruined, let me tell you, because again, so this summer, my nieces live in Florida. Since I live in California, instead of flying one way or the other, I was like, well, let's just meet somewhere else. So we flew to Louisville. And we decided that we were going to do Waverly. And then we also did like a haunted tour of like West Virginia. We just drove all around, went to like all these haunted places. And like even Waverly, there was like two things that happened that night. And I'm like, that's like 7 o'clock at night at my house. Like, I've got more of this happening on a random night at 7 o'clock at night when you're just trying to sit on the couch and watch TV. So
Right.
for me, I've realized, and actually, I think the reason I went to Waverly is because one of the paranormal investigators who came, they had a group, and he said, this is the most active place we've ever been. He said it's more active than places like Waverly. And so it stuck in my head, I think, when I booked it. But I never
Right.
really realized it until we went and did it. Because like we went to Lake Shawnee, the haunted amusement park. Again, like two things
Oh, you
happened.
did.
hmm
Ah,
So we went all over and we didn't really have much activity. And it's like, and I know that this is probably normal and it was so exciting for people to get this one thing, but I'm
right.
like, yeah, so
Yeah.
like this is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm totally absolutely ruined. And so yeah, it is kind of a paranormal detective's dream, except for the house does not perform for people with low energy. So if you get the Kennedy Mine has a paranormal investigation group and they do paranormal investigations there. Well, they came out one day and it was just like two women in their 60s, or maybe one in the 50s, one in the 60s, and a really just mellow guy. And the spirits they gave him like two, three, like three, four things or something like that, but they were not like their normal selves. And then I had another group recently, it was just two women. And again, they were probably in their mid 50s. Again, nothing. So I'm like, all right, you
Mm.
guys are sexist and ageist. But I really think it's more about energy. So if you have people with a lot of energy, they have a lot of energy and they're like, oh, you're impressed. Here, let me show off for you.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and sometimes with me too, where I'm like, oh gosh, if I'm thinking, oh God, I really hope they perform for this guy, then it'll happen.
Then they will. Then they will. Now,
Mhm.
why did you call it Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home?
So I probably made a mistake, and the first time I ever was in the house at night was a paranormal investigation. And I was told that the name, so my final walkthrough, we walked through the entire house and we got to the last tiny little bedroom. It's like, actually, when you first walk into the front door, it's to the right. I don't think I ever went into that room because when you go to the left is the living room and the library, and I love libraries. So I think I just skipped it completely. And so when we did the final walkthrough, we had to go in every single room and notate everything that, in it. And I looked at my real estate agent and my handyman and I said, there's a girl in that closet. And they just kind of looked at me like, okay, whatever. And so I was like, great, I have a haunted house. Well, my friend knows a paranormal investigator who happened to be coming into town. And so she's like, ask them, hey, do you guys want to come check out this like haunted brothel? And they're like, yeah. So they show up at like 1:30 on a Saturday afternoon. And again, immediately so much activity. So they got EVPs, a lot of EVPs. And then I didn't know who they were, where was active or whatever. I just knew the places that kind of creeped me out. And so then they've said, hey, we want to scrap our event this weekend, tonight. Can we just come here and bring all of our equipment? And I was like, yeah. Well, I spent my like an hour and a half in the basement with one group talking to the spirits down there. And there was another group who spent upstairs in that bedroom with that girl for about 2 hours. Cause again, they were just nonstop. And so she said I was told that she said her name was Bethany. And so I named it that. And then when we had the group there a couple weeks ago asking, and apparently her name is Elizabeth, and she did not go with Bethany. It's too late. It doesn't matter. It's Bethany now. So I named it after her.
It could have been Steve's Home Sweet Home.
I know,
Home Sweet Haunted Home.
Right. Well,
right?
Again,
Stefano's.
Hers was the first name.
Stefano's.
Yeah. And I really, really like, for me, they're just unalive people and I treat them like people. They're my roommates. And so that's been one of my hard things, is getting their names, because that's why I've done all the research I've done. I literally have about 150 probably newspaper articles or of different things from all the people who've lived in this house, or, everything I can find. And part of that was just to like, hey, the basement is really creepy, but now that I know it's Steve, it's not creepy at all. Like I can go in there day, night, it doesn't matter. And so I really tried to humanize them in hopes to make me feel better, but also, I'm always talking to them. So
and they want the acknowledgement. They crave that acknowledgement because so many people can't hear them and don't respond to them. So being acknowledged is a huge thing for them, You said you had a paranormal show film at the house recently. How did that pan out?
Well, I haven't seen it yet. So I guess, production is forever.
That night. Weren't you there with them that night?
I was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the whole gamut, and they saw there was 3 of them, and they saw the little creature, which I think is a little creature. They were like, oh, it's a little girl. And I'm like, I don't think so. And one of them, it was like a black shadow that kept poking out. And one of the guys like, oh, she's got funny hair. He's like, I think it's it's an African-American girl. I was like, not in Jackson. No, it's not. And so now that I know that it's very likely elementals, because I had another person who saw this thing, and they're like, it looked like a child, but it had a weird head. And it started to all come together, this footprint being small and this weird handprint that was like 4 fingers. And it's all starting to come through that I think we have some sort of water spirits attached to the land. And it is native land with the Miwok tribe. I reached out to the Miwok tribe to try to find out from there.
So that's kind of the definition for elemental. It's could you tell it to the listening audience what that is?
I think for most of us growing up in European culture, we've heard of fairies and pixies and gnomes and mermaids. Honestly, I didn't know that people thought that those were real. But these are elementals. And I just honestly never knew that, because again, I'm not in the paranormal world. So I literally just found this out. But it's basically spirits that are tied to the land. So they're not attached to the house at all. They are attached to the land that the house is on. And they tend to be trouble starters. So they tend to be little, they're a little bit mischievous. Some of them are scary, but they tend to be very mischievous. And so I think that, it went from, that makes a lot of sense, that I don't really have that many children in my house. It doesn't make sense that there's 3 children in my house, but does it make sense that there might be on this Miwok tribal land elemental spirits? Yes. Yeah, that makes, I guess, a lot more sense. So I'm still learning so much about the paranormal world in general, because again, it's not something I've ever been inundated to until I bought this house and kind of just got thrown into it at this point in time. And I'm a researcher. I read a lot. I listen a lot. So I have, really tried to learn as much as possible. But again, I literally never knew until like 3 weeks ago that people thought fairies and gnomes were actually a real thing, and they weren't just like a fairy, like a story.
Well, that's probably just how they refer to it. Even though it may be an elemental, that's how they describe it and refer to it. I think it's probably easier for them to accept something like that in that respect than in another. And when you think about it, even Disney and how they portray fairies and mermaids and stuff. I mean, when you think back to the original stories, the mermaids were mean and not all friendly and loving. So
Yeah,
it's
because I
kind
think
of
like a lot of gnomes like to like steal, or they're steal children, and there's some that like
yeah.
to elementals that like to like drown or bear kill kids. So there's definitely well, just like, our most of our fairy tales were pretty dark that have been sugared down for us. But and maybe I should have guessed it because the neighbor next door. So what used to be next door used to be a hotel, and that hotel was actually run by Steve until it burned down in 1931. And I was speaking to this woman who lives there, and she's a practicing witch. And she told me that she had pixies in her house. And, so she was having problems with things moving and stuff. But she has a lot of the same experiences we have with like phantom smells and things moving and all this stuff. And she'd always say on the creek, because actually right outside her front door is this bridge that crosses over that creek. She says, I won't go over there. There's something down there. She's like, I hear it making noise down there. Like, she won't go down there. But she had said, oh yeah, I had some pixies, but I had to get, but I got rid of them. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. But I literally was like, um, I guess I was just like, oh, whatever. Like, but didn't realize that like she was serious. I thought that she was
Hmm.
saying that maybe she had like she brought in an haunted object into her house, but no, she was actually talking about pixies, and these things
Hmm.
actually apparently exist, and or don't exist, however you want to look at it. But yeah, I literally just had no idea until 3 weeks ago that that was a thing.
That's crazy cool. You have this whole other side to you. My family are all huge animal lovers, and we do a lot of work with One Step Closer Animal Rescue out of Sparta, New Jersey, Barks out of Byram, New Jersey, and the Northern New England Westie Rescue. We actually run a dual school district wide supply drive, and my husband builds dog houses with his students to stuff with supplies. Please tell me about your wonderful rescue recycled pets, NorCal.
So, I have a friend who moved to Tennessee and got into dog rescue, specifically chained dog rescue, because there's a lot of chained dogs out there, and it's a problem, specifically because chained dogs tend to become more aggressive, and those are the ones that tend to cause serious injuries. So she got involved, and there was a chained dog in my area, and so she was like, "Hey, you like animals? Hey, can you help me with this?" And so that was in what, 2009. And I've been doing rescue ever since then. I specifically, the things I enjoy or the ones that I take are kind of the ones that nobody else wants. So I'm going to take the ones with spina bifida. I do a lot of cleft palate newborns. Um,
Aw.
Skinned is scabies, ringworms. People don't want that because they're afraid it's contagious. It's amazing. I've never gotten either of those things. So I tend to take the kind of them or the ones that are just have hopeless cases. So we do some hospice. So one of my last fosters, she just had some undiagnosed GI disease that couldn't be found out by the #1 vet school. We're lucky because I have the #1 vet school in the world here. But no idea what it was. So I had her and she went to the house with me and we traveled everywhere until she died. She just wore a diaper. And so,
Aw.
yeah, so I do a lot of diaper dogs. So currently in my room right now, locked away on the other side of the house to try to keep them quieter, I have 3 cleft palate French bulldog puppies that are about 3 months
Aw.
old. And they're all different litters, but they're all close in time. And then one that has, again, some unknown skin disease. She just has no hair and itches all the time. And I'm super allergic to her because I'm actually allergic to dogs.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so I'm constantly breaking out in rashes from her when she would decide she wants to cuddle with me. But yeah, so I like the old pit bulls, like give me all of those. So that's kind of my passion. With the houses in the last year, it has given me a lot less time for that. But yeah, it is still something I'm definitely very passionate about, trying to do what I can, especially for the ones that are deemed less desirable especially for a very treatable medical condition like cleft palates. Usually people, vets can just tell people to put them down as newborns. But literally, usually you just have to tube feed them for the first, 4 weeks of their life, and then they're fine for the rest of their lives. So I take a lot of joy in education. And I'm also working on a research project that's a combination for our Shriners Hospitals for Children and the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, where we're taking English bulldogs born with spina bifida, and we're doing stem cell research. And that actually has translated this year, actually last year, into babies. So taking babies who have actually they have fetal surgery. So, women go in and do their ultrasounds and find out the baby has spina bifida, going in and doing stem cell surgery on fetuses. And so, yeah, so I'm really proud of the work that I do with all those things. It just gives me joy. It's exhausting sometimes, but you can see I have a lot of energy. You can hear I have a lot of energy. So it just gives me something to do.
Thank you so much for all of the work you do for animals and children. That's so great. Yeah, I appreciate you. Well, tell my listeners how they can find your haunted home and visit it, and any way that they can reach you, and tell the world what you want to tell them.
Yeah, we're if you go to Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home on Facebook or Instagram, you can find us there. There's more on Facebook than Instagram because sometimes the videos don't translate. I've posted some videos on TikTok. We're also, as far as if you are wanting to rent the house, you can find the links there. Or we are on Airbnb and VRBO as well. So it is, it's available if people are going there specifically because they want to ghost hunt, because a lot of my people, I'm about half and half come just for paranormal and half come to do stuff in the town and be in the area. But if people are wanting to ghost hunt, I do have supplies available. I have all sorts of like K2, EMF, cat balls, ghost boxes. I have all sorts of equipment available to be used. And I'm always happy to kind of do like the whole paranormal tour things. It's about an hour from me, but I am always looking for any opportunity I can to go to the house because, again, I have an inappropriate attachment to it. So, yeah, so just reach out to me. But definitely you can go on Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home and you can see the stuff that I have. And again, that's no cameras upstairs ever because they break. So even when it was empty, every time I tried to put a camera upstairs, they would break. And so like they worked until I left and then they disconnected and then they would die. So I couldn't use them anywhere else. I've gone through 4 cameras trying to get a camera upstairs where I've been using the same brand of cameras in my own house for 5 years without a problem. So yeah. So I don't
Did
even
you just try telling them, leave my camera alone?
I haven't. I
Maybe you
haven't.
should. Maybe you
But
should.
I don't usually leave cameras up there anymore since, again, Airbnb, I never know who's going to show up. So I just don't have cameras in any public spaces.
Right. So
But
what's your TikTok?
it's Bethany's _HSHH Home Sweet Haunted Home.
Okay. All right.
So
find you there. And your Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home, all one word.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm I said more stuff goes to Facebook than other places just because of links and whatever stops it from posting. And I'm just learning TikTok, man. I am 44.
I know, I am too. I'm new at it as well.
44 and I've never done anything with videos in my entire life. So I'm trying to learn it, but I'm really into photography, but I'm not really into video. So it is something I'm having to learn to do. And so, yeah, so I'm sure I'll be doing more and more. And of course, hopefully more people will actually share their evidence with me. It tends to be the other way around where because I have cameras in my basement, so these paranormal groups will come and then I watch it because I want to know what happened when they were there. And then I'm sharing evidence with them instead of them sharing it with me. But hopefully, we'll continue to get more and more. And like I said, there's going to be more documentarians coming out. So I had the haunted historian was there recently. So he just put out a podcast too about that. Then I have haunted documentaries. They're doing a snippet, should be published on YouTube tonight, but they're not doing that. They're going to come out and do a whole movie, but not until November. And then I just had like the Hollywood Paranormal Detectives this summer, but they haven't produced it yet. So there's a lot of stuff in the works and some other stuff I can't talk about. So there's a lot of stuff in the works, but I'm still just waiting. But everybody who comes, they're like, yeah, once people find out about this place, like it's gonna blow up. But and I get it, because now that I've done the whole haunted tour of West Virginia and Kentucky, I know how unusual my house is. And I should have never been.
Paranormally active it is.
Because there's a hotel right down the street called the National Hotel, and it's been on all the shows. Like a lot of the places in the area, Preston Castle, Hotel Leger, actually I got married at. It looks like Ledger in McCollum Hill. That's been on Ghost Adventures. So these places surrounding it, the mine, have all been on all these shows. So it's a very paranormally active area. But still, I'll talk to an employee who works at the National Hotel, and it's like, oh yeah, I worked there for 10 years, and this one night I saw this one thing, and I'm like, what? You worked there for 10 years and you had one experience? Like, it just blows my mind, because again, it's like literally every single night, like I'll be sitting on the couch watching TV at 7 o'clock and you hear a door go, and I'm like, all right, guys, not funny. Leave me alone. Like, so, and messing with the lights and stuff. So I'm just like, I know that, yes, definitely. I think the more people learn about it, the more people want to come out. But I'm also very protective of my friends, Steve, and all of the other family. And so I do,
Extended family.
my new
ghostly family.
my new extended undead family. And I just say, I mean, at this rate, I might be joining them when I die. So like they're, I refer to them as my roommates. So
What does your spouse think about this?
He has never been there at night. He's never spent the night. He does not believe in ghosts. That's what he says.
Okay.
Although last time we were there, because I needed him to help me, he's an electrician, and I needed him to help me with something electrical. And we went into the basement, and I was like, hey, Steve, Nick doesn't believe in ghosts, so you should like pull his hair or something. I know you guys don't usually touch men. And he's like, no, I believe in Steve. He's the only ghost I believe in. He's like, and so now I have a shirt that says, I believe in Steve. But he has never been there at night. He's never spent the night. So I think that has to be for a reason as well. His mother goes with me all the time. And she says she didn't believe in ghosts. And she kind of went from, oh, I don't really believe in spirits, to it seems perfectly reasonable to go buy whiskey for a dead man within like 5 visits, because her glasses disappeared and she wanted them back. And I was like, well, let's try an offering. Let's see if that works. So she tried to bribe. She went to the store to buy whiskey to bribe the ghost to give her back her glasses. So
and did she get them back?
No.
Ah.
Steve says it's not him. It's to be the elementals who took it, and he can't go where they are. So he can't return them. But the first night she stayed there, her glasses and her cell phone moved in the middle of the night. And she's like, I have to tell you, you say weird things happen here. And so I'm telling you, this thing happened. And so literally every time she stayed, there's been activity where, we're the only ones there and a door just slams, and stuff with for no reason. So stuff has happened, so she just knows. She's not worried about it. She doesn't care about it. She's kind of aloof about it. But there's no doubt in her mind that this house is definitely haunted. So it kind of went from...
She believes in ghosts now.
Yeah. So I kind of, would like my husband to get there, but I kind of want them to like pull his hair or to do some grand gesture, because he's very stubborn. So I think half of it is just that he doesn't want to, because, he says, because I said, do you believe in demons? And he said, yes. And I asked him, do you believe in aliens? And he said, yes. And I said, but you don't believe in ghosts? And he's like, there's just no proof of them. And I was like, like the proof of aliens and demons?
Right?
And
I live with the same kind of man. My husband's a believer, non-believer. Same thing.
And he's just like, well, but he's like, he remembers watching, like when I used to watch Ghost Hunters forever ago, and I didn't really watch it all that long. I watched all those shows now because it's kind of like the same reason I watched Hoarders, as it made me feel about how clean my house was. So, I watch like the ghost shows now to make me go like, hey, they're not biting and scratching. So I'm doing good. So like I feel better about the house. But and so he's always mocking it, always mocking it. And he's always like, that's so fake. That's so fake. And so he said, oh, it's just, there's no proof of it. And then he's like, because people just lie and make things up. And I was like, Nick, you've seen my videos. Do you think I'm lying? And I did see a little light bulb click on in his head that like I'm known for being like too honest. And so it's like obviously nobody who's ever met me would think that I'm a liar. And it's the same with his mom, and his mom is telling her friends, and they're very religious. 'Cause they all met in a Catholic family. My husband went to Catholic church, school growing up and all that stuff. But but they know that she doesn't make stuff up. So if she's saying this house is haunted, like then it probably is haunted because she doesn't make stuff up. And it's the same for me. So I did see like a light bulb click on, and he did say, he's like, well, everybody talks about Steve, so he must be real. But then and he had one experience during the day in the house when he was there. He's only been to the house a handful of times, and it's usually to help me move heavy furniture that I can't move by myself. And one day when he was there dropping some stuff off for me, I'm like, hey, while you're here, can you hang these new fancy smoke detectors? Because I refuse to be on a ladder by myself. It seems like a bad safety idea. And so in this room that I hate, there's one particular room that I despise so much that I did not put a bed in it. Now, you realize in real estate, it makes no sense to have a bedroom without a bed in it, right? You make more money if you can have more beds, but no, nobody should be in this room. And so it has just really awful energy. So currently I have like one of those really uncomfortable Victorian couches and like creepy dolls in there to try to like get people out of there, because the spirit in there, she just doesn't want anybody in there. But he was hanging the smoke detector in there, and he comes out and he goes, oh, the ghost in that room must be kind of nice. And I was kind of like looking at him like, okay, what's the punchline here? But he said that he dropped the screw and it rolled under the door into the closet, and that it rolled out. And so, and it must have happened in a way to which, even if he doesn't believe per se, that he found that unusual enough to mention it to me. So that is the like one and only experience he's had. But again, he spent maybe 6 daylight hours, maybe 8 daylight hours total in the house in the last, year and 3 months that I've owned it. So he's never spent the night. I'm keep trying to get him to, but he comes up with excuses for reasons why he can't.
Not receptive. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was really a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And I hope the listeners will venture to your Airbnb and visit and have their own paranormal investigations in the future.
Yeah, all fails, you can, just watching the videos and stuff, you can kind of see what's going on. So you can just be a voyeur. And of course, obviously liking and sharing stuff always helps too. So I'd love to get more people to get Steve and all of his friends on the map. I just posted a picture of Steve when he was young that I found in a restaurant today. So if you guys are wondering what my Steve looks like, you can just go on and see a nice picture of him when he was working a bar.
And where do they go for that?
So on Facebook, Instagram, Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home.
Oh, but you have it on all of them. Oh, okay. I'm going to have to go check out what he looks like.
Yes. I mean, I've only seen him as an old man, like in the newspaper at 91 or 9 when he turned 90, and his obituary and stuff. So to see him as a man who's probably in his like maybe late 40s, early 50s, I was like, oh, that's what he looks like. So I've tracked down his gravestones and everything. Like again, I feel like I'm attached now. Again, his grave is literally about 800 feet away from the house because we all have a cemetery 700 feet from the house, and he's in it. So and he's really close to the house. He's not even deep into the cemetery. He's right at the front. So his cemetery, his plots are still there. But I just finally went out and found them last weekend, so that way I can go and take care of that too.
Oh, that is so nice. I'm sure he's thrilled with that.
Yeah, they're my family, my weird family. I mean, I had a weird living family, and now that they're all gone, I have this weird dead family. So.
Good for you.
Mine didn't go
Well,
to Leavenworth. You know, Steve's had a much more interesting life than my family did.
well,
I could
thanks
talk all day,
again.
so I apologize for
No,
that.
that's all right. No, that's quite all right. Thank you, Elsie.
Well, thank you very much.
If you liked listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real podcast, out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, which is available wherever you get your podcast, streamed through my YouTube, Eleanor Wagner. And if any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. I write about the history of the town and the location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. I hope you enjoy our soundtrack music performed by Silent Crafters' Stranger Part 2 off the Stranger Part 2 album as it takes us out for the night.